Okay, I'll call the special Board of Selectmen meeting to order for June 6th, 2019 at 4:35 p.m. Steve's not here. And we'll go to agenda item number 3, revision of charter revision draft report by Board of Selectmen. Okay. Any suggestions on how you want to start or approach? Yes.
I have a comment that may lead to some suggestions. I really think that the commission did a good job putting together all the ideas. However, I think I prioritize them on that list I gave you.
Yes.
And there are 13 items on there.
Yes.
I don't think we can present 13 items, even simple ones, to the public and expect to get any reasonable kind of answer out of it, as whether they like or don't like the changes.
Okay.
I think the first thing we have to do is decide on how many issues we plan to present to the public and prioritize. And I think at that point in time, we'll even lessen our job of review, because we don't have to review the ones that are not going to be, part of the deliberation or voting on the part of the public.
Okay.
I can do
All right.
go there and just see what everybody can comfortable with or not. I couldn't say that in Wellington, when we had their referendum on, I could be wrong, I thought it was 17 hours. Can you comment on that, John?
It's been a while since I've looked at that, but I think going back quite a few years, they had 17 questions. What was interesting was that you have yes, no, and it was very evident that they took each one quite seriously, because you saw quite a shift in the yeses to the no's and back and forth. That it wasn't like towards the end they stopped voting. Same number of people seemed to vote every issue, and pretty strongly one way or the other, right down to the end. I'm thinking I should get a copy of that so you folks can see it. I'll have to go back to it.
You have to.
This is the chart.
I'm sorry?
This is Ellington's chart. I picked it up today.
Yeah, well, it's not anything recent. More recent, they had 14 questions.
This is the most recent one. This was voted on in November. I'm sorry, November 17th.
And how many questions are there?
Oh, this is the chart. This isn't the ballot. This is the chart.
The question is, how many questions should you have for the voter, not for the chair?
Oh, that's something we should figure out.
Okay,
I'm not convinced that we should reduce it or should we leave it with that number. I am pretty certain in my mind, anybody that does come out to give their opinion about the charter would not spend long to look at it all. But that's what I
You think we should go forward with all 13 then?
No,
Okay.
no, and there's everybody's consensus here.
Yeah.
That may not be.
I'll say 3 that I would not have on the ballot. And then if you want to narrow even further, maybe if you a couple more that I would say aren't that significant, but you can disagree with that. You want to know my 3? Do you want to hear my 3?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think number 8, the police commission, Number 9, the police department. And number 10, the finance general provisions. I don't think there's a need for those.
What is number 10?
Number 10 is the financial provisions.
Yeah, what does it do?
Hi, Bob. The financial provisions, one, I think, the second item talks about transfers. And we do transfers very well. I don't see there's a problem with transfers. I'll get to the, could you see the have the page number, Jason?
On the, I think it's on the original red line, page 35. Well,
Yeah,
it's 34 as well.
Okay. So it's F, G, H. I'll get them out. Okay, so oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. 10 is okay. You misspoke. It's 12 that I spoke.
That's the same thing.
Is it?
Listed the same.
I'm already mixed up. Well, okay. Now I'm just going by Andy's.
Yeah, I don't know why I put it in order.
Okay, so now we're back to. Okay. Let's see.
This is what we don't have to
I'd like to, if I can find 8.3 is what I'm looking
It's
for.
on page 34.
34, okay. And, the additions, to that, so interdepartmental transfers, I don't think are needed. I think we do that one. And G, rules for bidding, we do that now. Approval of expenditures, C. Well, that seems to be E on 34.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I thought there were 3 that were added, but I don't see. And there's only 2. So transfers we don't need, and rules for bidding we don't need.
Also, is, on page 34 of the red line, is E existing in, E is new. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the existing revenue in the spreadsheet above.
Yeah.
right now, it's just a.
Yeah, I-
Our A, B, C, existing. So, when we, really, isn't the way I'm looking at it, it's part of the new road. So, A, B, C, and D, with the new road, exactly, the road, so, E, F, and G are recommended additional roads to the public. What is E trying to get? What's the underlying goal? It really requires the planning director to approve payment requests, operating plans, resident values, the policy. And then requires the county signature. Treasurer provided, requires two signatures on it.
And what,
That's pretty standard language for a company.
it is,
Don't
but
we require that now? Isn't that why we sign the check register? You do, but it's not in the code.
not in the charter, yeah, and what we do very well, I think, making payments, and the payments are approved by the department heads. And they're reviewed by the treasurer, and if they see anything unusual, they'll flag it and question it. But because they're approved by the department heads, and they have a budget, they're trying to stay within that budget. And so, and we, as you said, they're approved by us. So, I don't think that's necessary. It would be a lot of work to have this countersigning and the treasurer involved so much on every single transaction. Like, I go through for this, I'm the first selectman, and there's a software product that's called Action Fund. And every invoice that gets my department, I have to approve. That's some large ones like legal invoices, but there's some small ones like purchasing in the water. I have to sign $8 for that. So I have to scrutinize every single payment and sign off on it. And then the treasurer reviews it, and then we review it again for selection. So I don't think that either E, F, or G are needed. I think the system's working very well. We're also audited once a year. They pull out invoices and make sure they're done correctly.
What section are you in?
E, F, and G of,
I agree with your points.
well, I need mine not having that on the ballot.
I agree with that. Specifically for the reason you said.
If it's working, then probably,
Well, there's policy to govern. The policy is working. We're having big issues that suggest that they haven't been sufficient. I agree, it is working.
yeah.
Do you want to vote on these? If you want to eliminate
Why
them,
don't we do that?
okay.
Let's see.
So I move we eliminate section 8.3 financial general provisions. Right.
What we're doing at this meeting is we recommend to the commission that they remove it from the proposal. And now the back to the commission is already recommended changes. They can say yes, no, or yes or no. And send it back to you, and then you make the decision which of the proposed changes you want to provide. So at this point, we're recommending. Right, we actually start creating classes and eliminating options. after our recommendation, and have that when you get the final report, right now you have the draft report. And process-wise, are we doing another public hearing on our recommendations before they go to the Fair Revision Commission? I think we talked about that in the public hearing, in the second public hearing.
Yeah, yeah, just because you have to post it 5 days in advance. So I posted one for 7:30, June 12th.
Oh, that's what that is.
We
I
could
saw-
cancel it.
No, no, I saw the notice, I just wasn't clear
Yeah.
what we were, what that was for. But that's to hear what our recommendations to the commission are.
And you have 15 days when you go to that public hearing, you give the recommendation back to the commission. And they have a second day, I think it's 30, they send you the final report. If you have a final report, that can be decided what anything will say.
And do we have, at that point, where we get the, I guess the recommendations again, once we get them back in the final report from the charter revision, do we do another public hearing before we do the recommendation?
No, you're not allowed to do that.
Can we?
You can always have more. That's not the problem.
Okay, so we vote then to recommend that this be removed?
That would be the appropriate time.
Okay. I'll move to recommend that the Charter Revision Committee remove change number.
Well, we should, if I may, we ought to be working on the document, the red line document, because that's what came to us.
Yes.
So, if I could help out here.
Go ahead, you want to make the motion?
Yeah. I move that we recommend that the changes to section 8.3 of the general provision section of the charter as presented to us not move forward.
Okay. Good, that's what I like. All right. Another one.
Well, we need a second to vote.
Oh,
Second.
discussion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. No, please.
You want to tackle the 6.6, the police department?
6 on.
Yeah.
Starts on 22. So what are your thoughts on this one, Doc?
I think we should get rid of 66I and 7, the police commission. I think they're kind of tied together. And I thought about it and talked to people, and my first question was, who does the police chief report to? And the answer is, well, it depends on what he is doing. I guess he would report to the board of selectmen if he's doing some personnel, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, personnel changes or something like that. And he would report to the police commission if it's procedural or something like that within the police department. And then, so I don't see that he's reporting to, I don't think you could have one person reporting to two people. And so,
I think also the powers of the first selectman under, or is it first selectman or board of selectmen in emergency circumstances? That upends the other part entirely. That puts the first selectman squarely in charge.
if there's an emergency.
Yeah, that's right. School shooting, got it. Significant structural fire, chemical spill. You get a lot of use. Day-to-day stuff,
Well, I do see a problem with, I think our police department's very good. I think it's run very well. I think there's a communication problem to some degree between the police chief and the first selectman. For example, I think there's a buffer there. There's the police commission. And sometimes, like, the police commission came and presented the budget to us, but really didn't have detailed information that we would like to have. And then the police chief and the deputy police chief came with better. That's one thing, but also the police commission is the traffic authority in the town. Now, we're having problems with traffic, mainly from the large trucks coming from the gravel pit, and they are driving down Scantic Road, and there's this big sign by the 5 corners that says no trucks are requested not to really use Scantic Road, but they do, and it's tearing up the road. So I think, and also the color of the sign is wrong. I found that out. It's supposed to have a white sign with black letters, not a yellow sign with black letters. It's not official. It's that the wrong color, and maybe it's not. So just the traffic flow in general in the town. I'm aware of it because people call me up, but the police commission's not willing to tackle that at this point. So there's a disconnect on the general running of the town. It would be good if the police commission and chief are working more closely with the first selectman and maybe the school system. I know they seem to be working pretty well there. But I don't think this puts us where we want to be here. And maybe somebody told me just today, kind of late, but Suffield, in Suffield, the police chief reports to the first selectman. But I don't know that I've never tried that. So I don't think these two would help us very much at all. I don't think we accomplish very much.
Right now, we treat the police department differently than other departments.
Absolutely.
And it's different. The work department does not have a commission in between the work department and you.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder why the police department, has to be different than all the rest of them.
I think one of the differences is there's a statutory structure that enumerates certain powers for the police commission, whereas there isn't for departments of public works. Is that an accurate point?
If you adopt that statutory structure, it is, yes. You're not obligated to do it. If you do it police commission on charter, you can do it differently than what is set forth in the statute. What his proposal is. His proposal is to essentially repeal the ordinance and replace it with a charter police commission, which is slightly different. It's slightly different for advisory line of authority between police commission and first selectmen. First selectmen largely for administrative, non-sworn duty functions, and police commission for sworn hiring, all personnel people, also important personnel below the administrative side is secretary authority to administrative matters,
Records clerk, things like that.
records clerk. It's a divided, it creates the police department as a department of the town and other departments of the town. We want to place the police commission in charter to still handle the obligations that the duties for the sworn powers of the police department. Is slightly different than any other department because it's criminal jurisdiction. And the fact that you have one police officer and what they do is largely dictated by the statute. So the commission's proposal is to create a police department to allow the chief Well, the first selectman will have no input into the operation of the department, but not into the, but it's like that sworn responsibility.
That was within the commission.
That stays with the commission. And it is written down. The chief, the component of the chief of the commission's proposal, or the building commission's proposal, the appointing authority is joint between the two commissions and the selectmen. There are other changes too, just by virtue of the fact that it's a town department under the commission's proposal.
So what you're saying, this would bring the police chief's office and first selectman's office closer together to work through town issues?
Well, yeah, because today there really is no direct reporting authority to the first selectman from the police chief. The police chief essentially reports to the commission, and then the coordination happens between the first selectman and the commission. There's a barrier between the first selectman and the police chief.
Yeah, that seems like a disconnect to me.
Well, it's a disconnect, but I think going, and what I'm arguing is that these don't change the situation. Right now, if the police chief wants to hire a records clerk, he's got to come to the Board of Selectmen. He can't do that without our permission. And if there's a problem with any kind of personnel grievance or something like that, he again has to come to the first selectman in the legal firms. And he has to come to us to ask for a lawyer. So I don't see where this change would help the interaction at all very much.
But we would not, if this change were to be put forward and adopted, we would not be responsible for determining who got promoted from corporal to sergeant.
No.
We wouldn't be responsible for any determinations on shift bids.
I don't care what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
I don't care if my back is to anybody, I gotta hear what's going on.
Okay.
I can't hear nothing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, it was my understanding, this is correct, that most towns have gone and made the change like we're trying to do here, and moving away from where they were under the police commission and making it a police department.
It's hard to say most towns. I think let's stick to Hartford County.
Yeah.
I think most towns in Hartford County have police departments.
Yeah.
And, but when you get into the smaller rural towns that are predominantly first selectmen, board of selectmen, there's still quite a few statutory police commissions. I don't have the number, but it's still a model that is fairly prevalent in the smaller towns, because that's where a lot of towns don't have police departments at all. They have the resident state trooper.
Which the model states getting out of.
Yeah, so but among those towns that have municipal police protection, a lot of the smaller towns that have that do operate through police commissions. But once you get to a larger town with let's say more activity that needs police attention, in my experience anyway, there are police departments within the overall organization. I can give you a direct example of Simsbury. Simsbury has this model: department in the charter, police commission that works hand in hand with what used to be the first selectman, now the town manager, which is transitioned to the town manager. So that transition has been a little bit challenging between police commission and town manager, because town manager has more autonomy than the first selectman even. But they've been working through that. They've had this model for at least 30 years.
This model here.
This one here, where you have a police commission by charter,
Yep.
but it's the police department,
Yep.
the town department within the town.
Yeah, okay.
There are variants in between too. I mean, that's why home rule leads to so many different hybrids of, there's not this or that, there's whatever suits the town's culture, history, tradition. So that all comes into play in fashioning a police department, call it a police department, whether it's under the police commission, or whether the charter is a town department.
See, I don't see any downside to the new, the new charter revision. It just seems like if the first selectman is our CEO, that the police chief should have it be reported to him, at least to some extent. That doesn't decrease the importance of a police commission. It just removes that barrier between the police commission and the police chief that exists currently in our town. And I think that barrier is not a good thing.
The downside to it would be that you're centralizing more authority in one person.
You are. Yeah.
That's the counter.
But Jason, that happens all the time in corporate America, you know.
Government is not a businessman.
And I understand that. I understand that.
But it should be run like one.
It's not working out so well at the state or federal level.
We're not the federal level, we're a little East Windsor.
Well, that's a whole different philosophical discussion. My point is, centralizing too much authority in one person tends to freak people out.
Now, I'm of the opinion if we can bring those heads closer together in the communications, that I think that's important, and that for selectmen like Bob and the police chief, DeMarco, they're there every day, during the day. You know, they have the direct pulse of the people. Something needs to be done, then first selectman could communicate with them freely. I think it's a little step to do something better, and it doesn't defrock the police commission by any means.
I agree.
They're doing all the same things.
Yeah, I'm not knocking the police commission.
No.
I'm just simply saying that I think that the first selectman and the police chief should have a more direct line of communication.
Yeah.
And you want to compel that by charter, rather than less constrictive means.
Yeah, Jason, because I think that if not by charter, then, I don't know, the policies will get in the way, the people will get in the way. I'd like to have it written down that this is the way it's supposed to be. And the charter is the right place to put it.
So under this proposal, is it conceivable that a circumstance could arise where the first selectman gives the chief of police a directive that the police commission disagrees with?
I think if the directive were in the area of a police commission promulgated policy, then that directive would be out of order, because if you look at what the police commission does, they establish policies for anything to do with criminal investigation, or anything that deals with the work of the sworn officers really is not within the jurisdiction of the first selectman. It's more like, you know, hey, we're going to freeze the budget for supplies until the end of the fiscal year, and, you know, here's a directive to, you know, make sure we come and stay within our budget, that sort of thing, more than it is, hey, I want you to go and investigate those abandoned cars that were street or something like that.
Is it conceivable that the first selectman could give the police chief a directive to promote one of the corporals to a higher level, despite the recommendation of the... Now, I'm not saying if that would be in bounds or not, but if you have the chief of police now accountable to, or reporting to the first selectman, effectively turning him into the boss, there certainly is room for the perception that I'm being told to promote somebody who doesn't meet the requirements, or who happened to tie somebody on an exam, and so I'm going to tap the guy on the shoulder.
If something like that were brought to me as a question to town attorney, I would say that that was beyond the scope of the jurisdiction of the
first selectman, and I'll tell you why, because under proposed section 7-7D, the police commission shall be responsible for personnel matters within the police department, including but not limited to appointment, removal, after receiving comments from the chief of police and such rules and regulations concerning town employees that may be adopted by the board of selectmen, that's the personnel rules. So that would fall into a personnel matter that is specifically given to the police commission.
How about if we,
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
Just as it is today.
I'd like to read this, because when you read what's here, I don't see what it says so basically, it says, one is just establishes a police department. This is 66I.
That's kind of what I'm
And it says, the police commission and the first selectman shall jointly recommend to the board of selectmen who shall appoint and remove in accordance with the provisions of section, or CGS section 7278, a police, chief of police who shall serve for an indefinite term of such other term as the board of selectmen shall determine. So that just says how the police chief will be selected. So that does give some thing to the first selectman. I noticed in yours you crossed off this first selectman and give it to the police. And I think police, so that doesn't help the first selectman, I don't think, in the duties or the interaction with the police chief. It says the chief of police shall be responsible for preservation of public service, public peace, preservation of crime, apprehension of criminals, regulation of traffic, protection of rights of persons and property, enforcement of laws of the state in accordance of the town and all the rules and regulations in accordance therewith. Now that doesn't say anything about the relationship between the first selectman and the chief of police. The chief of police shall assign all members of the police department to their respective posts, shifts, details. That doesn't say anything. The chief of police shall, subject to the approval of the police commission, make rules and regulations concerning the operation of the department, the conduct of all officers, employees in accordance with the policies as established by the police commission. That doesn't say anything about, that's no help to the first selectman. The police chief shall be responsible for the efficiency, discipline, good conduct of the department, for the care and custody of all property used by the department. Again, nothing. Disobedience of lawful orders, rules, and regulations of the chief of police shall be grounds for dismissal for other appropriate disciplinary action. Should the board of selectmen determine that the police chief should serve an indefinite term, at the end of said vacancy, the office shall exist, and if encumbered is not reappointed, neither the board of selectmen nor the town shall have any obligation to the former chief of police whose term has expired, except as may be set forth in the employment contract, which may have been previously entered into. Again, nothing. Members of the police department, all members of the police department, except clerical and personnel without law enforcement responsibility, shall have the same powers and duties with respect to service of criminal process, enforcement of criminal laws, invested in the police officers. So really, that whole thing, I don't see how that improves the relationship between the first selectman and the board of selectmen, and first selectman and the chief of police at all.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I think that concept is captured in subparagraph 1, where it says the East Windsor Police Department is hereby established as a department of the town and subject to the rules and procedures that apply to all town departments as set forth in this charter. And then if you look at the powers and duties of the first selectman being chief executive and chief administrative officer, because it's a department of the town, would have the right to establish rules and procedures for all town departments as long as they did not invade the criminal and police enforcement of criminal laws. Because that's, all the language you read is really a carve-out from the previous section, the way the commission has written it.
Okay. And I hear what you're saying, that might be.
That's the intent anyway.
Yeah.
So what if we start with subparagraph 2 and 3?
Yeah, so just paragraph 1. The East Windsor Police Department is hereby established as the department of the town and subject to the rules and procedures that apply to all town departments set forth in this charter. As said, what, the rules and regulations as set forth in this charter? Is there other, we have rules and regulations for departments that aren't necessarily in the charter. Would they be subject to those too?
Yes, as a town department.
Okay. Because I was thinking it would be nice if in this charter, but maybe this is sufficient, if the Board of Selectmen voted to have the police chief come in to brief us on any particular thing, that he should come in and not say, well, the police commission doesn't want me to do it, so I can't come in and talk to the Board of Selectmen. Now he could say that.
That's correct.
But with this paragraph 1, maybe he couldn't say that because he is a department of the town, and if the Board of Selectmen wants him to brief them on a particular thing, then he would be obligated to come and talk to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah,
And I think having that loophole that would prevent the police chief from coming in, if he didn't want to, is bad. You know, he really, like all other people, his function, really, whether defined this way or not, should report to your office.
an analogy is the superintendent of schools.
Yeah.
If the Board of Selectmen said, hey, we want to talk to that superintendent about, how many pianos they're buying or whatever, the superintendent could say, I'm sorry, but you've got to direct your question to the Board of Education. And if they ask me to go, then as long as the chairman sit next to me, they'd have to, I mean, that's really,
It is.
that operates. And this is not, the way it's written now, it's not too different than that.
It's true, and like we were saying, that the police chief didn't want to come. That's one thing, but also if the police commission didn't want him to come, they could say, don't go. And that probably is not a good thing to help communication in the
And
town.
I don't think that's a good thing for the operation and communication within our town.
I agree with you. So
It's
maybe,
not.
maybe we'd do like Jason, why don't we just keep paragraph 1?
What are you saying? You gonna scratch paragraph 2?
Yeah,
Why would we do that?
because it doesn't do anything.
Right. The purpose is explained, isn't addressed in the recommendation.
The only thing it does is it makes the appointment power joint between the police commission and first selectmen.
Which I have an objection to anyway, because what happens if the two disagree?
They've got to work it out.
So there's a mutual veto on both sides?
Yes.
That doesn't seem...
Because
So
the
what's to stop the police commission from saying to the first selectman, or the first selectman from saying to the police commission, we'll agree on a candidate so long as you pick only this guy?
Well, the board of selectmen is the appointing authority.
Right, but if they have to join the recommendation as recommended here,
It's got 2 signatures on it.
yeah, and I'm happy to sign the piece of paper as long as you guys agree with what I said.
One way to work it out.
It's not a way to work it out.
Well, I mean, that's the way it's written. Whether you
And
think
that's-
it's a good idea or a bad idea, it's up to you.
Yeah,
That's the way it's written.
I have flagged that as a problematic section too, and not just here, but in places, there were a couple of references to dual appointments, which is like, you can't have, that doesn't work. There's an appointing authority. There's a recommendation made to the appointing authority should decide what it is.
Well, under this proposal, the board of selectmen is the appointing authority. It's just who they can appoint is limited to those candidates that receive the recommendation, both the police commission and the first selectman. So there's one appointing authority.
And the first selectman has a vote in that as an appointer, as a member of the appointing authority.
Yes, it does.
So it's effectively giving that position 2 votes.
I thought about that.
yes and no, because with a five-member board of selectmen, the appointment takes 3 votes.
Yeah.
And whether it's 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5, it's still 3 votes. So even if the first selectman didn't have a vote held in the appointment, it still takes 3 votes. But again, these are
Yeah, but if
policy decisions for the commission to make with your input. It's not, I can tell you that it's not contrary to state law to do it this way. It's how you want to do it is up to you.
So what we're saying here is that the Board of Selectmen, or is it the first selectman, has a say in who the police chief is.
That's correct.
That's simply what it's saying.
Not only a say, but essentially both the commission, the way it's written, both the commission and the first selectman have to agree on a candidate.
Yeah.
To get it to the board of selectmen.
for a rubber stamp.
So
It doesn't have to be a rubber stamp. The board of selectmen could say, thank you very much, but that's the last person we appoint, and then the police chief doesn't get appointed.
I quite honestly think, in the overall scheme of things, that if it's the right person, I wouldn't see one party or the other party going so far out of reach that they didn't come together on it. But I do think it's a good idea to have the first selectman in commission interview, look at the candidate. Is this the right person for our community?
And is there
I
any
think
prohibition
that's-
on that under the current language?
There's no prohibition, but there's no obligation. The police, under the current language, the police commission chooses the chief, and it's up to them whether they want the first selectman's input or not.
And they can appoint and
Yes.
send it to the board of selectmen.
No, I think they do the appointment now,
They do the appointment.
That is correct.
All up.
without input, without any,
Yeah.
it changes you, this language changes the appointing authority from the police commission to the board of selectmen.
Okay.
For that position only.
For that position only. That is we call that a major change from what you have today.
So they can do what they want and tell the Board of Selectmen to go take a hike.
Now,
Right now they can.
Has that happened?
Well, whether it happens or not, it could happen.
We can, if we're gonna start playing the supposition game, I'll be doing that for the rest of the evening, so. that's
We
good.
can do that, Jason. if you
No, I
want
don't
to.
want to do that. But,
This is really a one every 10-year event,
yeah.
in reality.
This is one thing that concerned me. When I first took office, the police chief said, I don't have to talk to you, and he's correct. And he said that when Linda Roberts was the first select woman, the police commission said, don't talk to her, and he said, I do, which he was obligated to obey what the police commission said. But that's not a good situation.
No.
So I think the first paragraph is good. I think, I guess I don't have a problem with the police commission appointing the chief.
So you're still on, I think you and I are still on the same page with striking subparagraphs 2 and 3. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
But Bob, of what you just said, does that mean you're okay with the police commission picking a chief and not the Board of Selectmen? Okay in it?
I would say yes.
I'm not for that.
Okay.
No, I'm not for that.
I think the more people that can look at somebody for such an important position, and you're looking at it from a different view than what they're looking at as a police chief to conduct law and order, is, do you have the right person that fits in the community? I think that's really essential. And you've seen where, police chiefs and, have been put into jobs and a year later they're out because they didn't fit in. And the more people that can look at them, you can't have the whole town look at somebody, but I certainly think somebody who is running the day-to-day and has the pulse of the people should have some say, some review of it.
Yeah.
I think we're better off doing that, that's all.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
Okay, well, I was going to drop this, but I'll rescind that. So we can, I guess I would keep it, maybe make some changes, but.
I mean, if we don't need all the language after that, because it's in a contract, and that's different.
What you're suggesting is you could, for paragraph 2, delete everything but the first sentence.
Yeah.
Can we take out the jointly recommend?
The police commission and the first selectman shall jointly recommend to the board of selectmen. Yeah, I don't know if the first selectman has to be part of the recommendation to the board of selectmen.
Because the first selectman would ultimately have a vote as
Yeah.
a member of the board. That's my point.
That's a good point. I don't have any problem with taking the first selectman out of it.
Your thoughts on
And then we'll just have the first 2 sentences then, in a sense.
With the deletion of "and the first selectman shall jointly."
Yes.
So where does the new language stop?
Police commission shall recommend that the board of selectmen who shall appoint may remove in accordance with CGS 7-278. And then it stops at that sentence under your.
And at the end of that sentence is where we're striking the point. Okay, that was my question.
So you're going to leave them to the board of selectmen shall return?
Through number 3.
I'm sorry.
Through number 3.
Yes.
Stop here.
Thank you.
Shall recommend the board of selectmen.
Okay, Jason, you want to make a motion to recommend to the,
I move to recommend to the Charter Revision Commission that 6.6I be stricken after the first sentence in subparagraph 2 through the last sentence in subsection 3, and that we strike in the first line of subparagraph 2 and the first selectman jointly. Okay. Is that close enough?
okay.
Good enough for government work.
I'll second that. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good.
I'm going to hear 2 votes. I'm really being a pain in the ass.
That's fine.
But I only heard 2 votes. So,
Aye.
we're all going with that?
Majority.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all I have to say. I was talking about ones that we could remove, and we did remove the police, but I think we made a good change to it. But now, is there other things that people want to look at that we might?
Do it with the police commission instead of 7.
Oh, right.
Okay,
And these two really need to fit together.
yes,
Yeah, you make a good point.
okay. But that's,
So,
7.
so what does the existing ordinance say? Do you know?
I don't have it with me.
I can't
I think it's largely a reference to the statute.
yeah, the ordinance, the town ordinance just said that it'll be created according to the state statutes. So it's whatever the state statutes say.
I think the statute says not inconsistent with the charter, so
Yeah.
considering this, your charter changes what the statute says.
Yeah.
It's okay, because the charter can do that.
Yes.
Let me see if I can pull up.
I do have.
You got it.
I have a lot of the state statutes right here. If you want. It goes to the book.
Is that? So 7-276 is the powers of the commissioners. Shall have general management supervision of the police department, shall make needful regulations.
I don't see an ordinance that is in place pertaining to the police commission.
There it is.
What is it? Not listed on the website of the police department.
Such
No.
board shall have the sole power of appointment, promotion, and removal of the officers and members of such police department under such regulations as it adopts for the purpose of such appointment. This is the statute, 7-276. That, I would say that all members of the department would include the chief of police. Starts off 7-274, any town may by ordinance establish police commissioners to be elected or appointed. This board shall consist of 3, 5, or 7 electors, all of resident taxpayers. I would say that the appointment of the chief by the board of selectmen is inconsistent with the statute. So you want to retain enough in the charter to make it clear that you intended to do that.
Can we do that? Can we give ourselves a power that is not provided in the statute that we reference?
As long as you do it correctly, you can, except as set forth in this charter, except as provided for in this charter, comma, police commission shall have all powers and duties of 276.
If we were to do that, so I'm getting a little confused with the differentiation between a commission established by charter and a commission established by adoption of the statute. So the current structure that we have is a commission that has they have been adopted by statute.
Well, no.
The ordinance adopts the statute.
The ordinance incorporates the full powers of the statute.
Right. So we are changing in the only sentence left in subparagraph 2. Powers that have been adopted by ordinance that reference statute. So I'm coming, in my confused way, I'm coming into conflict between the state's power versus the municipality's power. So how are we not in conflict with statute, and how do we end up in the right of it?
On all issues of conflict between local law and state law, you have to go through the steps. You have to say, okay, A, are they in conflict?
Yes.
If yes, B, how are they in conflict? Is it a matter of statewide concern, or is it a matter of local concern? According to the Wyndham taxpayers case, the Connecticut Supreme Court 2009 said very, very clearly, for matters of purely local concern, comma, charters preempt state statutes. It's a difficult concept for most people to think about, because everybody thinks, statutes are higher precedent than charters, local law is subservient to state law. But under home rule, if the charter says it shall be this way, so long as it's a matter of purely local concern, and in that case had to do with boards of finance, and the court said very clearly how the town chooses to set up its board of finance and adopt its budget, and as long as they do it through charter, it's their concern, it doesn't involve anybody but the residents of Wyndham. Applying that rule to this, it would be so long as the charter doesn't invade the police enforcement responsibilities of the operation of the police department, then the charter would preempt or could modify essentially 7-276, if we choose to do it that way. And I think the way you've done it would be considered by the reviewing court to be a matter of local concern, because it's strictly focused on who the appointing authority is, the police chief. Doesn't say a word about what he or she does when appointed. In fact, you've taken all that out. So by taking it out, if you didn't do anything with the police commission, it would fall back on the police commission, if you were going to do it. So I'm comfortable with that, so long as you have language somewhere in the charter that says that that is your intention. Intention is to retain the full powers of the police commissioner, the police commission to the police commission, except as where it's inconsistent with the charter. And the only place it would be inconsistent with the charter would be the appointed authority for the police chief. I don't think a court, given Wyndham, would say, no, you can't do that.
Where would you insert that?
Well, right now, you haven't taken out the charter of police commission.
Yeah.
So by putting it in the charter, I think you elected not to have a statutory police commission by ordinance. You've elected to create a police commission by charter, which means you can leave as much or as little of the statute as you want in it. It's probably a simpler way to do it. But we'd have to, the commission would have to think about, if you say, well, it depends on what you say. You said clearly, recommended to the commission, take out everything except paragraph 1 and paragraph.
First sentence.
First sentence paragraph. Just take it out. Which leaves next, what do you do with the police commission's recommendation of the charter? Do you leave it? Or do you do something different with that?
What is the practical effect in the change of the role between the police commission today and the role of the police commission under the proposed changes?
I really don't think the commission intend, except for having a direct line of report to the first selectman for administrative matters, I don't think the police commission's intent is to, John Sierra, is to change the law enforcement functions of the police commission, leave them right where they are.
That's correct, yeah.
But what the commission was most concerned about is fixing the problem of not having the direct line of reporting to the first selectman for community/administrative matters. And that's what the intention was, to leave the police commission with its full set of statutory powers, except for creating a line of report to the first selectman on those matters that don't involve law.
So maybe we could add a third sentence to that paragraph which says just about what you said, that the police commission shall have the powers set forth in 7-24, whatever it is, with the exception of the.
Well, it really says, the commission, paragraph subsection C, 7-7, subparagraph, the commission shall be responsible for the police department and shall also have those powers and duties, not inconsistent with this charter, as are now or may hereafter be conferred or imposed upon by section 276.
Mhm.
That is intended to say unless it's inconsistent with the charter, it goes to the statute for their powers and duties.
And that's in 7-7 is? Where's that?
Yes, 7-7, elected police commission.
Okay. Okay,
So the intention was to retain the full powers, statutory powers of the police commission, except for those reporting responsibilities to the first selectman, as we talked about.
yeah, so, and then I was thinking about it in the ballot for on the referendum for the charter changes, that could be one question, I think.
Yeah, it should, shall the charter revisions recommended changes to sections
Yeah,
7-7 and 6-3 be approved to establish.
to keep the police commission function as outlined in
Yeah.
the state statutes, with the exception of the police.
Appointing authority for the
of
chief
the-
of police.
Yeah, yeah. And, Okay.
The challenge to the questions is getting them not so wordy that they don't fit on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yes, you could,
Okay,
you
so
could
that-
combine that into one question, should you choose to. And probably should,
Yeah,
because they
because-
fit together.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want one to pass and not the other.
yeah.
If they both fail, that would be okay.
That we should be putting in one.
Is there anything that has to be done with the section 7.7 to make it consistent with the change of reporting the chief to
You know, I don't think so. I think that
I was looking
phrase
at it. I don't see it.
in subparagraph C, not inconsistent with this charge, covers it.
yeah, second line said not inconsistent with this charter. I would think that would.
You might want to consider recommending shall, just take out be responsible for establishing police department policies and shall have, and just leave it, the police commission shall have those powers and duties. Just take out that, recommend to take out that phrase, be responsible for establishing, because that's all in 276. I don't think you need it in both places. 276 says,
Where's the sentence you're talking about?
on C, powers and duties.
7.7C?
Yeah,
Yeah.
police commission shall, starting with the word be responsible. Just take out that phrase up to the word also, so it reads, police commission shall have those powers and duties not inconsistent, because the bit about departmental policies is really captured in
It's covered in
276.
Yeah, I read it.
And that would further clarify that you're leaving intact everything in 276, except for those things that are inconsistent with the charter and the way you recommended it. The only thing that would be the appointment of the police chief.
So what you're saying is within the commission shall have the responsibility for not for establishing.
No, the commission shall have those powers and duties not inconsistent with the charter.
Okay.
And I think that clarifies the intention of the commission.
It does, yeah, that's good.
Because by adding that language about policies and, well, that's already 276, why would you here? Does that mean it's changed? By taking it out, it's clear that whatever 276 is, that's what you got.
Mhm.
Except for that part about and I think along those same lines, if you want to recommend deletion of B and D, probably do that too. Because again, that's only 276. Although I personally, I like E because it clarifies how collective bargaining is handled. That's up to, that's your,
That's the way it's handled now.
it is.
So again, I'm at a little bit of a loss for what the difference is, other than the appointment of the chief, which would now be done at the recommendation of the police commission and appointed by the board of selectmen. Beyond the appointment of that position, what is different? Nothing.
Well, except that the police
It's a department of the
is
town.
part of the town.
Yeah.
And what does that mean in comparison to what it is today? I feel like this is going,
It means if the first selectman issues a directive to all departments, the police department today can say, well, that's a great directive, but we're not a department of the town. We're under the jurisdiction of the police commission. Now, for matters of comity and getting along, and, I'm sure that the chief of police says, well, yeah, we can help you out with that, but they're not obligated to. So you've got that departmental, the directive that applied to all departments, so long as it didn't invade the police enforcement responsibilities, would apply equally to the police department.
What is an example of one of those policy directives that doesn't impact the policing authority of the department that the first selectman might issue?
You know, I want your proposed budget by January 15th this year, I want all your proposed capital by January 15th.
But the end result is, if you don't get that, it's not going in the recommendation.
How about our dog, changing where the dog kennel is? That's something that the Board of Selectmen decided to close the town's dog kennel and joint partner with South Windsor and East Hartford.
So using that as an example, I would think that under the current language, the Board of Selectmen would have been able to do that under our contracting authority and with our fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah. But I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of, I haven't seen the police commissioner or the chief really support this in any way, and I don't know if they're gonna even do it. But I'd like to have them come into the Board of Selectmen meeting and talk about it.
Is there well, I think we could do that.
Really?
But
What if the chief said, no, I can't, and not, the chief police commission has directed me not to speak with the Board of Selectmen?
has that happened?
I don't know, it hasn't, no.
Okay. Not, at least not that we're aware of. I get that I understand that. I'm still stuck on a policy that I need an example to understand this. Can you help me out?
Well, you know, I had a constituent, first selectman, I had a constituent come to my office and complain about the excessive trucks on such and such a street, and I set up a meeting for 2 o'clock next week, and I'd love for you to join me and speak with the constituent, to better, you know, as, you know, as the department of the town, department head of the department of the town, the police chief at that point would have to say, well, okay, I guess I'll be, because I have responsibilities to the first selectman for.
But that's not a policy that would be issued by the Board of Selectmen that up until now the police department isn't subject to. I mean, I'm thinking like, what is an example of a policy that the town would set that would apply equally to the town planner that does not currently apply to the police department that would under this change?
Well, the entirety of the personnel rules, for one thing, would be clarified that the personnel rules, so long as they didn't, the selection and promotion and discipline of the sworn officers would apply equally to the police department as it does to every other department.
But under 276, aren't we leaving the personnel rules for the personnel function with the police commission?
Yes, except for hire, but it wouldn't even for hiring. Yeah.
Right,
So
so-
for police officers, not for clerical, but that we do that now. They can shoot, yeah.
Members of such board shall have the sole power of appointment, promotion, and removal of the officers and members of such police department. I interpret that as meaning the sworn members of the police department,
Yeah.
not the clerical staff.
I would interpret the officers to be the sworn members of the police department.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So is there a distinction in the statute between officers and members?
It says officers and members of such police department. I don't think a member of the clerical staff is a member of the police department. I think the clerical staff.
How about a dispatcher?
No, dispatchers.
Dispatcher is not a sworn officer.
That's true, but.
So your
Sworn
interpretation
officer.
is that pertains only to sworn officers?
Yes. Yes, I can't think of an example of an individual that wouldn't be a sworn officer, that would be a member of the police department at that time of years.
Confidential secretary.
What do we, what's the purpose of this? I don't understand.
I'm still working around the personnel questions. And so my understanding was that the personnel function was being retained by the police commission
Right.
as a subject to
But
276.
collective bargaining is retained by the selectmen.
Right, which is status quo, isn't it?
Yes.
So okay, now we're going way back. That gets me back to what changes here.
What changes here is, as he said, I think if the police chief was and the police department was a department in the town, then his presence could be requested at town meetings. A town meeting being, for example, we have a,
But that's not this section, Bob. This section, you're talking about the previous section, which
Yes.
talks about, but the section that we're talking about pertains to the police commission.
oh, and so maybe we're saying, I thought we were talking about this section just so it would integrate into the previous section.
He's saying that the two should be linkable, but I don't have an understanding of what this does.
And section 7.7.
Yes.
I think the only thing it should do is say that the police commission has the powers that are set forth in the state statute, whatever it is, dash 24.7 or 276, with the exception of section.
Non-consistent with this.
Yeah, yes, 6I of the charter.
Okay, so I really am struggling with getting to this. So under the current structure, the police department has a budget that is appropriated and approved by voters and ultimately controlled by the police commission. If the changes in 66I and 77 as presented, 66I as amended, 77 as presented, were to go forward, who would have jurisdictional control over the appropriated budget?
Police commission.
And that's because of
276.
okay. And the police commission would retain personnel issues for sworn officers,
Absolutely.
but not for like a confidential secretary.
Well, let me ask you, well, confidential secretary is probably not a bargaining position. in the police
It is.
department.
It is. Which is surprising because it shouldn't be, but
Well, yeah, they probably petitioned in and, they got in. But leaving that aside, what bargaining unit is he or she in? Not
it's a
in the-
clerical position.
But it's probably in the town hall bargaining unit?
Yes.
Not the police officer? How about the dispatchers? They have
They're their own,
their own unit?
yes.
So that's sort of, the sworn members of the police department are in that bargaining unit, except for, I think it's just the chief and the assistant chief that are allowed to be out of that.
Right, so you're talking about the 24 sworn officers.
So when the statute says officers and members, that's the group it's talking about.
Okay. So let's say we move forward with the changes to 66I as amended, and we take out 77. What happens? So 7 is the police commission provision stays status quo.
I think if you were to take out 7.7 entirely, you'd have to add something to 6.6I that clearly indicates that 6.6I is a carve out from the statutory powers of the police commission.
That seems to, as you alluded to earlier, that's probably the cleaner way to do this, right?
Well, I think 77C does that, with that line not inconsistent with this charter. You've got to have that non-inconsistent with this charter language somewhere. So if you take it out, if you take out 7.7 entirely, you're probably going to put something in 6.6I that indicates that it's the town's intention to deviate from the statute through the charter on this one issue. You don't want it to be uncertain, because then you're going to have it be subject to different opinions and interpretations over time. You want to clearly say, we know we're doing this, we're intending to do it, and we're carving out this one section from the statutory duties of the police commission. And if you were to do that, I think the reviewing court would say, under Wyndham, well, it's not a matter of statewide concern how you pick your police chief. What the police chief does once chosen, that's a matter of statewide concern, because that's law enforcement, and that's clearly you're not going to tell a police chief how to enforce a criminal law. That's a statewide concern.
Nor is the first selectman or the police commission going to tell the police chief.
No, that's exactly right. Police commission can set policies, but that policy as the legal system is stated.
So what we're saying here is being a department that changed, quote, to be a department, that there could be a directive from the first selectman that we're going to buy all of our paper to be used from Staples.
That would apply to the police department.
Correct. It would, things that are not to do with everything that's already listed. There are the economies to some of these things. We're going to do our own vehicle repairs now. We hire a mechanic, and
That's
all
right.
town vehicles are repaired by the town mechanic. Those are the things that could come about as a result of
Well,
this.
here's our bid list for
Yeah.
equipment. You're to choose off this bid list.
Right. Should assist in that process.
Now, as things go along, it makes everything better if the first selectman, the police chief, and the police commission, and the board of selectmen sort of collectively
Yeah.
agree on all this stuff. Because it's still one town, and one set taxpayers, and all that stuff. By making it a department of the town, it does bring it, in my view, it brings it closer to the operation of the municipal government on those non-police issues.
Such as procurement,
Such as procurement.
but not personnel.
Not personnel, because that's clearly in 276.
Can we move on? I would like to get through some more stuff, but can we wrap this up somehow? Decide what we're going to...
Well, we decided to make a recommendation in 66I.
Mhm.
That's not very long.
Could we let Bob write into the charter what he thinks would integrate the two?
Well, your recommendation doesn't have to be delete this, add that. It can be as broad as, you know,
Fix
make
this.
changes to 7.7 to make it consistent with the changes we recommended for 6.6I.
Okay.
And then that's up to the commission to come back with a recommendation on how to do that, understanding that you get a second shot at this once you get the final report.
And in that second shot, we accept the recommendations, reject the recommendations, or amend the recommendation.
You can't change their language, but you can say, go back and try again.
So we can't amend.
You can't write the section, they write the section. But you can say, the way you've written it isn't consistent with the directive we've given you. How about you take another shot?
So would it be,
Tell the commission what you're trying to achieve and leave it up to them to write the language. Is that sound right?
so where is membership currently? Where is membership of the commission governed? That's in 274, right? I think it's in 274.
Yeah, it's in the statute.
Okay. So if we were to take out in 7.7, or recommend to take out in 7.7, A, B, D, E, F. All of the current status quo remains governed by 274.
Correct.
And
Well, chapter, what is it, 101?
104.
Chapter 104.
Okay. So that would leave just C in 7.7, renumbered appropriately and all that, which would cover your notwithstanding or not inconsistent with the charter concern. And by doing so, the only two substantive changes would be that the police department would be recognized as a department of the town, and that the police chief would be recommended by the police commission and approved by the board of selectmen.
Correct.
Other than that, everything else remains status quo.
And then everything stays the same.
So that would be your fix. Take out A, B, D, E, F.
Do you want to make a motion? I'll make a motion if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I move we recommend to the Charter Revision Commission to remove from section 7.7, sections B, D, E, and F,
I think you said A too.
and, okay, A, and change
So A, B as in boy,
A, B, D as in dog.
C is the only man standing.
Yeah. And change section C to be consistent with the changes to section 6.6I.
Having done that, those things we're omitting or deleting are covered under General Statute, Chapter 104.
Yes.
Add
Yeah, and you still have the ordinance in place too.
Right.
The ordinance now controls, except for
The one thing we changed, two things we changed.
two things.
Okay.
So you haven't eviscerated the ordinance, it stays in place, but the ordinance is subject to those two charter changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those are the discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, how about the treasurer? So that would be D.
I had a substantial change to that.
Okay.
And it's not, it's a substantial change in terms of throughout the document, but I think it makes it easier based on a conversation we had with Bob D. He had said, Bob, you had said that the reason the treasurer was left in there, it became finance director / treasurer, is because the statutes speak a lot to powers of the treasurer. So what my recommendation was, and I've made this change throughout this red line, I defined the finance director as having the powers of the treasurer under the general statutes one time, and then I referenced that throughout the document so that instead of saying the finance director / treasurer, we defined the finance director as the treasurer and then referenced the finance director throughout. The reason that I thought that was important was one, for to remove some confusion, but also because that was a stumbling block for a number of candidates we had trying to fill the position. So if it is established as a finance director, but defined as what the statutes recognize as the functions of the treasurer, that seemed to make sense.
And I can add the specific statutory reference that allows the town to do that if you want to recommend that change.
That'd be a good idea.
I mean, it is a little bit cumbersome to continually refer to the position as finance director / treasurer.
So I made that one-time thing, and then anytime, I just did a control F for treasurer, and anytime it came up again, I just struck it. So that it says finance director, except for the time we define the finance director. And that's in the copy of the red line that I gave to you. Is that clear to everybody? Do you
Yeah,
understand what I'm doing there?
I think it's great.
Other than that, there's no change to the existing language.
But yeah, the existing language being the language that's in the current charter.
It just changes the title.
Yeah, okay.
And that's all was the intention to start with, was to fix the title for recruitment purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think if you advertise for town treasurer, you're going to get one set of candidates. If you advertise for town finance
Yeah.
director, you're going to get 50 set of
Precisely.
candidates.
You want to make a motion, Jason?
I move to recommend to the Charter Revision Commission that finance director be defined as town treasurer under the statutory construct and make changes throughout, striking treasurer, leaving only finance director.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, how about anybody have anyone they want to pick out? That would be something we get through. Um, How about more separate budget questions? That would be 13, or section 8.5 AB.
This section sucks.
Okay,
No, I mean, chapter 8 entirely, it's just a mess.
okay.
I apologize, I lost which section sucks.
Please don't do that.
I'm looking at it.
It's just a mess, it's just like, it's been carved up so
Listen,
many
my
times.
job is to put your words in that one.
That's helpful.
Could you be a little more specific? It's too messy to be
It
specific.
is really messy.
What page are you at?
42?
What page?
42?
Okay.
Well, you really have to look at, though,
That's what I'm saying.
you have to read it, you have to look at 41 and 42 sort of simultaneously.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Okay, and now, so the main crux of this proposed change is separate budget questions.
Allows the Board of Finance to present the annual budget in more than one question.
Can they do that now?
Yes.
Then why do we need this?
It makes it clear in the charter that they can do it.
Does this change require that they do it now? Or that they require it, that they're doing it? Does it require?
No,
they do it
I
going
think
forward?
it shall be in the form of one or more questions. They can choose to have one question.
Jason, I do think that there's some charter change here because one question, it defines what happens if there's two questions and one of the question passes, one of the questions
It does
doesn't.
that, yes.
What happens now if that were to be the case?
That's unclear. Well, if they chose to do three questions, town, board, and capital.
Yep.
And town passes, board fails. What goes to second referendum? I would argue that second question goes to referendum. First question's already passed referendum, because they're separate referendum questions. Real issue is you get to the 2% default issue. So board keeps failing at referendum. And at the third referendum, it reverts to 2%. Does that 2% apply to the entirety of the budget, or just to the portion that kept out? I think we have to really think about that in terms of what the present language is. If the budget fails at third referendum, the budget reverts to last year's approved budget plus 2%. Well, the budget didn't fail at referendum. One portion of the budget failed at referendum. So you have to, I think if I were asked to interpret that, I would say it would be the entirety of the budget that reverts to 2%. Because it says the budget, last year's budget plus 2% shall be the approved budget for such year. And one of the major changes in this language is to make it clear that it's only that portion that fails that goes to referendum. And then the commission made the judgment that after the third referendum, budget shall be determined, let's see, what was it, at the third referendum, the whole budget goes to 2%, or just that portion that failed?
Portion that failed.
Portion that failed goes to 2%. Yeah, the portion,
Yeah, I see, it's a
there are
subparagraph
reports to the
4.
last year, there was some discussion about that, but the final choice of the commission was the portion that fails goes to 2%.
That's correct.
So you could have the town side go up by 1%, get approved, and the board keeps failing and failing and failing. At the end of the day, the board alone goes up 2%, so the overall increase would probably work out to be less than 2%. But that is a change.
And then
Right now,
I
your
think,
language really doesn't anticipate more than one question, I guess.
But there's nothing prohibiting.
No, the Board of Finance has discretion on how to present the budget at the annual referendum, because it's their budget that goes to referendum.
but I think by putting in the first sentence, it says, shall submit to the voters, the town, in the form of one or more questions. This lets people realize that indeed the Board of Finance can ask more than one question. And that could be brought up. And if I could just anticipate, you could, if I was a citizen who comes to a Board of Finance meeting and said, I'd like to have the at some point in the far future, the Board of Education separated from the rest of the budget, the Board of Finance could easily say, oh, no, we can't do that. And then, the resident, somebody could challenge it, but they'd have to go to a lawyer, so it could get sticky. But if it's here, then it's indeed you can.
And I think it should be spelled out specifically. I don't think we should give the Board of Finance that option. The budget has always been a one-question budget. I really believe that at least the town's operation and the Board of Education budget should be judged by the voters individually. My preference would be to take another couple of items or another couple of budgets, the larger ones, and include those. But I think, at least at the beginning, we should separate those two.
Well, yeah, but what we're talking about is just whether the Board of Finance can do it or not. And indeed they can, and this clarifies a little bit that they can and how they do it. So.
But I would like to see it specified that it broken into two specific questions.
And I don't think I want it. I'm happy with the language here, actually.
I'm not.
Okay.
The Board of Finance is not going to split anything up.
They have not, ever.
Because they know the school budget will fail every time, and the town's budget will probably pass.
That's true.
So unless it's in there and has to be split, the
So
Board of Finance is not going to do it.
Okay, so basically you're saying that this is one change we could just leave out.
I mean, you can't give them the power to split anything.
They have the power.
But they're not going to do it, Jason.
So,
Again, so
They
I'm
will
going to
not
go
do
back
it.
to a comment I made at the last regular selectmen's meeting, where we need to be thinking about these changes, not in terms of the personalities who currently sit, but who, holistically and practically how this will be a workable document for whoever sits there.
yeah,
So,
I don't understand your point. That you're saying the Board of Finance will never do it. So what? We're talking about a change here to the charter.
Right, but like Andy
Yeah.
said,
And you're saying that,
that they can split it if they want to.
right,
They're not going to.
that's true.
but
But we have to put it in there that
So you're.
it's
you don't-
mandatory.
Oh, to have,
At least start with, the education system and the town side. I think it has to be in there mandatory.
okay.
Other towns do it.
It seems to me that, when they do their budget stuff, they're getting a budget from the general government, and are getting it a separate budget from the Board of Education. And since they're getting it that way, they should be presenting it to the public that way. So the public can decide, this one's good, this one is good, move ahead. They get it that way, so why would you combine it, which has been done over history? Do you know what I'm saying? It's exactly the way they get it.
It's their purview to do though. And again, it serves as a check on consolidating too much power anywhere. Having them have that discretion, they should exercise that discretion.
I'm not understanding where it's too much power. It's power to the people who can decide what
People
they
would
want
vote
to
on
do.
it. People would vote.
I believe we should give the voters the opportunity to say yes or no on budget questions. I also believe that my preference would be to separate it into 3 or 4, but I'd be willing to settle for, as Charlie says, the budget comes to the Board of Finance as 2 separate questions. Why would the voters not be given the opportunity to vote on those 2 separate questions?
Well, if you did, put it in the charter that you want 2 or more separate questions, and 2 of them have to be the town budget and the Board of Education budget. You could make that recommendation to but if it's in the charter, it's going to stay here for 5 or more years.
Yep.
So,
I mean,
If it's
if
in
you
there, it's
want,
gonna stay there
if you
forever.
want to put,
maybe not.
it wasn't recognized, Robert's rules.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, sorry.
Sure, if you want to keep it like it is, where they can make a decision to put other budgets in there, that's fine. But make it mandatory. 2 have to be the town side and the Board of Education side. Because like Charlie said, they come to the Board of Finance as 2 separate budgets. You know, so why does the town side, which is really the town's people, have to be punished?
For having kids,
No, be punished because of the Board of Education side, you know?
If somebody wants to make that motion, that would be fine.
I'd like to make a motion that in section 8.5,
Recommend to the, you make a motion.
recommend to the
Board-
Charter Revision Commission that paragraph A, section 5, be changed to say that be submitted to the voters of the town in the form of Board of Education and Board of, and town operating budget.
Okay. Discussion. Is there a second?
Okay.
Discussion.
I find this is disgusting. I don't have any other words. This is just absolutely disgusting.
And I'll vote against it too.
You and I have been on the same page all day. Have you noticed that?
I guess I have.
You know, guys, I'd bring up some stuff here, but I don't think this is the place to talk about it. You're saying it's disgusting. I think it's pathetic, the way the education system is running. Okay, I think that's pathetic, that they're soliciting all these outside students to come here, that they're putting all their efforts into special education and not the local kids. They're really emphasizing special education, costing the taxpayers a bundle of money, okay? If they didn't do that, okay, they doubled down on the 75 kids that come in here from out of town, okay? I think that's disgusting. Just so you can fill the classroom, so you got work for the teachers, that's disgusting on my back, my tax dollar. So how much more disgusting do you want?
Okay, is there any further
So
discussion?
that's all I gotta say.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Absolutely not.
I'll oppose it. Okay, now we can move on to another one. Okay, automatic referendum, 12.
What's that one under?
It's a new section 10-9.
Page 51.
51.
Okay, I look on mine. Jason, are you going to participate?
I am I'm looking for something else. But keep going.
Well, on mine, I left, this is towards the back, it's number 12. That's number 3. Yeah, so I shortened it up, and it didn't rest, I was looking at Jason's, and we almost got the same thing. I just took out this, polls in such a referendum shall be open 6 to 8 PM, that's not necessary. And then, well,
Can I ask you something?
sure, yeah.
Haven't there been sometimes that there's been voting from noon to something?
Yes. But every year, the Board of Selectmen sets the time for the polls shall be
All
open.
right.
The reason for that is because the default in the statutes is that polls are open from 10 to 6, and it's silly, so we always look at it.
I don't know if I like it.
I'm sorry, Bob, what number did you say?
What, it is, it's 10-9.
You did it. 8.
Page 51.
Yeah, I'm looking at his,
Well, and I look here, it says,
there it is.
That's Jason.
maybe I mis, I don't like it.
I don't think you meant 10-9.
Yeah.
During what, the one with the hours?
No, no.
The polls of such referendum shall be open from 6 a.m. to 8 current.
Yeah, but we, also it says, which involves an appropriation amount in excess of $150,000. I crossed all that out and made it, which involves an appropriation in aggregate of an amount more than 1%.
Of what?
1% $400,000.
Yeah,
What's the section?
Cool.
10-9.
In the time that you were working on.
Oh,
Okay.
page.
Oh, no, page 50.
50.
50, I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page now.
So, yeah, So, or just 45 days.
So you're like, in what you provided us, Bob, this is all that 10.9 would be, or this?
Yeah, but I don't like what I wrote.
I think you want to go with mine,
Okay.
because mine's got the hours thing in it.
Well, I don't think we need the hours thing then, that's what I'm saying.
Then we need to keep extending the hours every time we have referendum.
No, we once a year, we say
Right,
all.
but we'd have to do it, we would have to continue to do that once a year. What I'm saying is like, we're always going to do it, so
No, I'd rather do it once a year. That way you don't have to have it in the, but that's not it. Well, I guess,
Doesn't cost anything to have it in there.
well,
it does though, because it requires that, if we include it, it requires that those hours be that way. Bob was suggesting that I imagine that there might be a circumstance where we don't want to do that.
I can't imagine one, but it just, we've done it every year, and because the state statute says we have to.
Right.
And they'd have this one, it still wouldn't, we'd still have to do it every year because,
No, because local elections, right?
Well, if it didn't satisfy the requirement for automatic referendum, you would have to do it.
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
You can have referendum that aren't fall under this definition of,
Right.
like somebody were to petition a supplemental appropriation to referendum. You know. The board's like, always do that, except they.
Yeah, so that, I see your point now.
Okay. I'm not sure, well, and then, so going on, it says, any motion, in yours, what does it say here? It says, any motion at a Board of Selectmen meeting dealing with a referendum matter which seeks to reduce the amount of such a referendum matter shall require a 2/3 vote of the Board of Selectmen? Does that make sense?
That's what they wrote.
I don't understand that. What are they saying?
I think what they're saying is if we're petitioned to have a town meeting on a supplemental appropriation for $60,000, and we want to, the Board of Selectmen determines that, yeah, we're going to have the automatic referendum on that, but we're not comfortable putting $60,000 out, we're going to reduce it to $45,000. That would require 4 of the 5 of us to vote to reduce it to $45,000. Is that correct?
I don't, now the amount of supplemental appropriation is set by the Board of Finance.
Yeah, I was just using it for instance. The point is, if we're petitioned to have an automatic referendum for X, and we want to do less than X, it would take 4 of the 5 of us to vote
I
to
think,
do that.
I would leave that out.
It is confusing.
And, yeah, okay, I don't think the Board of Selectmen can change it. But maybe we want to leave it in.
But the 1%,
Yeah, I would go with 1%.
which is 400,000?
Right.
It's a big number.
It is a big number, but we have, it says in the aggregate, or it should say,
It does.
yeah, because, well, I mean, we've in the aggregate had $800,000, and we've had $657,000, so I suppose you get around it by breaking it up and to have,
Yeah.
it may be, so maybe we, I don't know.
I think that if you raise the bar high, people start breaking them up. Well, they're going to start breaking it up anyway. so they avoid the automatic referendum. My personal opinion is I would rather see a lower bar of $150,000 because we in the last couple of years have pushed through some pretty bad appropriations. And I'm not going to bring up my favorites, but I think 150 would have caught those. No way of avoiding automatic referendum. Whereas if you have it at 400,000, you can tie together a couple pretty bad ones and still get away without having done that. Going automatic referendum. Once again, you know, I'm a believer in the fact that the voters, it's their money we're spending, and the voters should have a say. And I think they're smart enough to make a good decision. That's kind of where I come from.
Yeah, but I think for one reason, if we put a fixed amount in, I think people might vote against it because it's a fixed amount. And it should be a substantial amount, so there's a reason to have this automatic referendum. And so I think the 1% is sufficient. And if people start breaking things up, so they'd say, well, we won't have a town meeting for these 5 supplemental appropriations, we'll do it for 4, and then have another town meeting for this other 1. I think it gets to be pretty obvious what they're doing, is they're trying to avoid this.
But they're still living within the charter,
Yeah,
the charter limits,
well,
and it's acceptable.
I think the residents and the voters would start to realize what's going on, and there'd be a check for that. And also, I think if we don't make it pretty substantial, I don't think this thing will pass. So you could put 150,000 in, and I don't think people will vote for it. But if you say, hey, if you want 1% of the budget, $100,000 in the supplemental appropriation, that should go to a referendum, and that, to me, would make sense. And so,
I think if you did it at the 0.5%, that at least at this point in time, that I think, $250,000, $250,000 is that there should be voters saying yes or no on that. And you have to think about moving forward that as the budget continues to grow over years, that number will also grow. Right alongside it, that number will become $500,000. So I don't think that to start off at the 1%, I think it's a 0.5%. I'd be comfortable with that.
I agree with Bob.
okay.
Yeah, 1% is a good number.
Yeah. I think if you think about the size of the fund balance and the policies that govern that, and the GASB recommendations that govern that, there are instances where we need to spend down on one-time projects that make some sense to do. I'm not interested in making, forever changes to this document based on uneducated votes by selectmen. I agree with Bob.
What would be those uneducated votes?
This all stems from the added appropriations that we did for Abbey Road, and you guys voted on that without being comfortable with what you were voting on, and you regretted that, and that's exactly where this recommendation comes from. I voted on that as well, but I knew what I was voting on. This is reactive. Bob's point's a good one, that there are, even with his language, there's still an easy workaround here that is going to be very disingenuous to voters. And it's going to be used, and that's unfortunate. If we're going to include this at all, and I don't like any part of this section, but if we're going to include this at all, Bob's is the best version of it.
number is too high. Again, as the budget grows over the next 10 years, that number grows right alongside it in the same proportions. And voters need to have a say in what is being spent.
Well, what I would say is, this charter change is going to a referendum, going to the voters. And they will, if this, automatic referendum is part of it, they'll get the vote on it. And some will say yes, and some will say no. And so if you want to make it
But
0.5%, then fine. We'll let the voters decide if that's what they want.
Here's the thing, that, I don't like the percent thing, in that the people that are gonna go in and vote, they won't know what that means, period. Unless you put an amount in there, they won't know.
I'm afraid you're right.
So that's how you phrase the question. So you might have to put in quotes. Today, that would be $200,000, approximately
Let
$200,000.
me ask a question.
Sure.
So the 1% would be what, 400 and something thousand, right?
Right.
So every time somebody comes in, like was already mentioned, well, they want to do 300,000 to get under that. We wouldn't have to go to a referendum at that point, right?
That's true.
Well, we all know they're going to play that game.
Exactly.
That
We
that
all
is
know
true.
that,
That's
Yeah.
exactly, and that's disingenuous.
okay?
But you're absolutely right.
But the other thing is, do you think that if you put a lower figure in, 0.5%, or do you think that people would vote for it? Because that'd be about 200,000.
I don't know, Bob.
Okay, then let's give it a shot.
I don't know.
All right. All right.
So maybe do the 0.5% thing?
It's all about giving the voters some right to say where their money's going.
Because usually most anything anybody wants to come in and get money for will probably cost over 200,000 anyway,
Yeah?
you know? At least the other way, that would get a vote, have to go to a vote. Where if we use the 1%, they're gonna come just under and won't have to go to a vote.
They'll probably do that anyway, Steve, even at 0.5% at 200,000, but I feel more comfortable with 200,000.
Okay.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
I can make a motion then for the 0.5%. So I move we recommend to the Charter Revision Commission to have an automatic referendum if the appropriation in aggregate amounts to 0.5% of the annual budget. And period. Leave out the when the polls are open, and leave out any change that the Board of Selectmen can make. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
When you put the 0.5% in there, you're gonna put some kind of a figure next to it?
Yeah, I guess we should do that.
Because the people are gonna say, well, what the heck does a 0.5%
But that would be
amount
more,
to?
That's
yeah.
a problem, you're
That's a
right.
framing of a question, that's not for.
Yeah, that's how the question's gonna be framed on the referendum ballot, so we'll discuss that later. I guess the board, I guess the board, Charter Revision Commission will make those questions, is that correct?
No, we do.
Board of Selectmen frames the questions.
Oh, okay, good, so there you go.
But they'll probably recommend the
Yeah,
questions.
all right, well, that's good.
So can I ask, discussing on the motion,
Mhm.
and just bear with me a second here, because it's going to come right back to that. Currently, when we notice a town meeting for 7:30, can I notice another meeting for 7:35?
another town meeting for 7:35? So for example, if the school was to say that they are doing their laptop replacement schedule and it's going to cost them $230,000 in order to.
Split it up in half.
Yeah, I'm gonna appropriate at a town meeting 130,000, and then 5 minutes later at the next town meeting, the other 100,000, and thereby, it's two separate town meetings, so even in the aggregate, it's two different occurrences.
Somewhere, I think in this charter, it says that town meetings have to be at 7:30.
Okay, even that, can I notice two town meetings for the same time?
I don't think you could do it for the same time, but I think legally, you would probably say we're gonna have one at 7:30 and another one at 8 o'clock. I guess. At some point, you'd be subject, well,
My point in the example is to illustrate that this is a flawed concept.
well, it would be up to the Board of Selectmen, though, to call the town meeting.
Mhm.
And if someone were to propose to the Board of Selectmen that you have one at 7:30, and another one at 7:45, another at 8 o'clock, you have to rely on the good judgment of the Board of Selectmen to say, no, that's not the intention of our charter. The intention of our charter is to bundle these proposals in the aggregate and see whether they meet this referendum threshold or not.
But we're demonstrating we don't have a lot of faith in the good judgment of the selectmen or the Board of Finance by even moving forward with this.
Why? That's,
Which is a policy question and not your ability to pick at that. I don't mean that.
I-
My point is, there are clearly opportunities to take advantage of this that will clearly be executed. And that's not going to do anyone any good. It's not going to do the people who are intending to put this in, it's not going to do the people who are intending to circumvent this any good. This is not good policy.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that,
That's two, by the way.
okay. I think it is like a check. And if you see some group, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, trying to dance around what the charter really intends, then I think it becomes obvious to the residents and the voters that those, the people, the group that's trying to manipulate and avoid the charter is not doing the right thing. It's not doing, so I think that would be the check, the voters themselves. So that one argument I disagree with. I think this does say an overall policy that that the voters should have some say over the expenditure of town funds, and there's a threshold when that's met, and if that the threshold is in the charter for other things like bonding and things like that. So I think that this will work. I personally believe that putting the threshold so low as a 0.5%, it won't pass. I don't think the voters will want that, but let the voters decide.
The fact that people will game the system doesn't relieve us of the responsibility of trying to do something which is correct. And I agree that they're going to game the system, whether it's 400,000 or whether it's 200,000 and 0.5%, or you could even set the number lower and they'd still try to game the system and probably be successful. Bob's right. It would become obvious that they are, but I don't even know how many voters look at this kind of thing close enough to be annoyed by it.
So the other point that hasn't been talked about here is that there is already a remedy available under the statutes to address this through the petition section. Is it 7-9, I think? Something like that. It's already available.
Being said that if the board doesn't like it, they can ask for, they can petition to go to a referendum.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
the voters don't like it. They can look at the call of the agenda. Steve can say, I want to spend $200,000 on computers, collects a small number of signatures.
I think 200.
Is it 200?
I believe so.
That's still not hard to do.
Easy for you, difficult for me.
It is 200,
You
yeah.
pick 4 neighborhoods and you go door to door, it's like, it's not hard. That's a remedy that's already available. All we're doing is we're weakening the power of town meeting by doing this.
How is that?
So there are different forms of government that municipalities use, town meeting, town manager, mayor, council.
I'm aware of all that.
This is a change away from our form of government, which is town meeting. The legislative function of the town is town meeting. So by circumventing that, you're lessening the power of our form of government, when there is already a remedy available in statutes to address that.
Okay, and I agree with what you're saying. We do circumvent the town meeting when we have our annual budget roughly.
Mhm.
So we do that.
Yep.
And this is another instance of that. But I think we should go ahead and vote. I made a, and it was
Oh,
second.
you did make one, I'm sorry.
And it was seconded by Andy, so, all those in favor?
Can you remind me what it was?
Maybe.
Okay.
What's that, your second?
What was the motion?
Motion.
To recommend to the Charter Revision Commission that having the automatic referendum with the appropriation of an aggregate of 0.5% of the annual budget, leaving out hours of
Polling hours.
whatever. And any change that the Board of Selectmen can make, which I'm guessing you meant the 2/3.
Yes.
So do we reference that in this motion? Or just-
Well, I don't know if we need the 2/3, but just any motion.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
And
So it's one half.
any motion to reduce the referendum amount. Okay, all's in favor?
All right.
How about you, Charlie? Okay.
I'm opposed.
I apologize for totally redoing
Okay,
4-1.
all right. Now, we're running out of time. So on the agenda, I do have public participation. So why don't we go on to agenda item number 4?
Sure.
Okay, public participation. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Okay. Hearing
Is there a
none?
question?
Yeah,
Is this public participation?
yes,
I do have something to say.
okay.
I'm sorry, I was distracted here. You have voted to eliminate section 8-3.
Yes,
Okay, I'd like to point out a couple things. Paragraphs A, B, C, D, E are already in the chart.
well, we do want those.
Okay, so we will retain those.
Yes.
The purpose of the change here is twofold. Under paragraph F, what we're proposing is that the Board of Selectmen in the last quarter of the year would have the ability to transfer funds, unexpended funds within their departments. These are already part of the annual budget, but they've been assigned to specific departments. The Board of Selectmen would be able to transfer up to $20,000 from one department to another in the event of some unusual circumstance. And this would be over and above the Board of Finance's ability to reject it. It's
Okay.
a small amount of money, get talking $40 million budget. And it would address issues that we've seen come up over the course of the year, and many years. And you wouldn't be stymied by a Board of Finance who were at odds with the Board of Selectmen. You would be able to do that. And you could do it up to 3 times for a total of $60,000. So that's paragraph F. I think the Charter Revision Commission would come back and ask you to retain that. Paragraph G What's important here is that we currently have a bidding process, and bids are open, but we don't define where they're open. They're apparently open at individual departments. So in order to have openness to the process, we're defining here that all bids, all sealed bids should be open in the first selectman's office at a designated time, so the public is aware. We don't want bids opened in the police department or bids opened in the public works department or whatever, where there's concern about did they follow all the procedures for the bids properly requested. So this defines that all of those bids would be opened in the first selectman's office in front of the public.
In South Windsor, I do a lot for them. And all the bid openings, they're always done in the public room.
Good.
All right, because you couldn't get the public in Bob's office.
Sure.
Or there could be 50 bids and you can't get everybody in there.
Right.
So you gotta have that word, it's in the public
So,
room.
okay, so we have office of the first selectman, and that's clearly, could be modified to the town meeting room, but opened by the first selectman. So we're looking for, we're going to come back and request that those two items be included. You have rejected the entire package, and we understand A, B, C, and D are already in the charter. We really don't need to restate them, but we think these two are very important.
Why wouldn't we make that change by policy?
When you put them in the charter, you institutionalize it. Policy can be changed year by year, board by board. Put it in the charter and it becomes standard practice and institutionalized. Not easy to change. Why would you want to change those two?
I wouldn't want to change it, but that's not a charter question, that's a policy question.
Okay, I think,
It's a charter question when you want to institutionalize it.
I think we should adjourn. So,
Well, is there anybody else?
Still looking for public input.
yeah,
Yeah, moving to the 10 rights for the further. Whether I agree or disagree with the policy, that the charter revision that's being put forth here, I was just curious as to why there isn't any consistency. If we're going to change and have a town department report directly, the police chief, report directly to the selectmen, why aren't we doing the same thing with the fire department in Broadborough? Why aren't they a town department reporting straight to the selectmen, with the same thought process that we're doing with the police department? Because for me, I think people have a vendetta against the police chief, so this is a way to get around it. And as he said, the comment that he passed about the negativity or something that he didn't agree with, that happened by the Board of Finance. We're taking it personal rather than taking the charter revision and what's best interest of the town, and we don't have consistency. If we're going to make a change, there should be consistency and not reactive upon somebody's dissatisfaction with a certain individual, because people change all the time. Employees change, volunteers change. So,
thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Take a 5-minute break and return for the regular Board of Selectmen meeting.
Thank you, Bob.
Who's sticking around?
If we have time, I don't think it's necessary.
Are we going to revisit,
We may if we want to. It's on the agenda, it's at the end of the agenda.
so, two things. First of all, with the camera still going, I didn't want to bifurcate the meetings. But along that line, why don't we set a time? Are we going to meet again on this?
No rush.
or-
I think we should, and we can do that at the meeting.
I can't afford to play the electric bill.
The only thing.
We're not ready for public hearing at this point, I don't think. So we might have to cancel that.
Okay. All right, my suggestion was going to be to carve out like
It's not going to be here.
45 minutes or an hour
Yeah.
and just keep going, take that out of order to see where we
I
get.
think we should have it.
I'll see everybody on such a nice day.
Thanks.
Turn this to you.
All right.
Catch up on
I'm available